Emily and I met on a rainy afternoon at a bookstore downtown. I had ducked inside to escape a sudden downpour and ended up wandering through the nonfiction section, half distracted and soaked through. She stood just a few feet away, umbrella dripping, flipping through a paperback with this completely focused expression, like the storm didn't exist. When she caught me looking, she gave me a quick smile, then held up the book and asked if I'd read it. I hadn't. She insisted I should. That was it. That was the start. We talked for almost an hour that day, just standing between shelves. Turned out we lived 2 blocks apart and had somehow never crossed paths. She gave me her number by scribbling it on the back of my receipt. "Don't wait too long," she said, tucking her umbrella under her arm. I called her that night. Our first date was simple, coffee and a long walk afterward because neither of us felt like going home. It was effortless. No awkward pauses, no forcing conversation. Emily had this way of making every moment feel full, like silence was just as natural as laughter. We kept seeing each other, and every time we met, something in me settled a little more. It felt good. It felt right. Within a year, we moved in together. A third-floor apartment with creaky floors and a kitchen barely big enough for two. But it was ours. She brought art into it, prints, candles, colors I wouldn't have picked. I brought the coffee machine and the decent cookware. We meshed in ways that felt lived in from the start. We got married after 2 years. A small wedding, mostly family and close friends, under a white tent in her parents' backyard. She wore a simple dress with a wildflower crown, and I swear I've never seen anyone look so present. The whole day was easy, laughing, hugging, dancing barefoot. We weren't interested in flashy. We wanted real. And we got it. We settled into our life quickly. I worked full-time at a financial firm downtown, slowly moving up. Emily did remote work and marketing, which gave her more flexibility. She kept the house full of movement, new recipes, spontaneous plans, weekend markets. I took comfort in routine, and she made sure we never stayed stuck in one. Evenings were our time. We'd make dinner together, talk about our days, sometimes just sit on the couch and scroll quietly, legs touching. We had friends over often, hosted game nights, celebrated little things like they mattered. Because to us, they did. If you'd asked me then, I would have told you we were in a good place. And for a while, we really were. One of the things I always appreciated about life with Emily was how we managed to build stability without falling into monotony. She had this way of adding sparks to everyday moments, whether it was surprising me with a new dinner recipe or pulling me outside at night just to look at the stars. We weren't flashy. We weren't dramatic. But we were solid. And in today's world, that felt like more than enough. Our weekdays were a rhythm we both came to rely on. I'd leave for work early, catching the 7:30 train into the city. Emily, working remotely, liked to ease into her day, tea, a morning playlist, then diving into client calls and content briefs. We'd check in around lunchtime, sometimes just a text, other times a quick call if one of us needed a mental break. It always felt good to hear her voice in the middle of my day. Like a reset. She took care of the house in ways I didn't even realize mattered. She kept fresh flowers in the hallway, rotated the books on our living room shelf so guests would always see something new, and made sure we had real dinners more often than not. Her version of love wasn't loud, but it was everywhere, quiet details tucked into the corners of our life. Weekends were slower. We'd sleep in a little, make breakfast together, pancakes, if she was in charge, eggs and toast, if I was. We liked exploring new parks, farmers markets, vintage shops. Emily always found the best little places tucked into neighborhoods I'd never heard of. I used to joke that she had a sixth sense for charm. We had our own space, too. She needed time alone now and then, to recharge, to create. I'd retreat to my desk with a book or my laptop and let her have the living room for a while. It was never a source of tension. We just respected each other's quiet. Vacations were our shared indulgence. Twice a year, we'd pick a spot, sometimes a road trip, sometimes something bigger like a week on the coast. She loved planning. I loved surprising her by upgrading things last minute when I could. We'd take photos, not for social media, but to fill the physical albums she insisted on keeping. I liked flipping through them with her, even when we weren't reminiscing, just because it reminded me of all the little chapters we'd already lived. Looking back on those moments now, it's clear how much trust defined our relationship. I never second-guessed where she was, who she was talking to, or what she did with her time. She gave me no reason to doubt her, and I didn't. It's almost surreal how easily you can love someone without seeing the cracks. Or maybe the cracks weren't there yet. At the time, all I saw was a life that worked, a marriage that felt real, and a woman I believed I truly knew. It started with a casual conversation over breakfast. Emily had just pulled the coffee pot off the burner, her robe loosely tied, her hair still sleep-tangled. She leaned against the counter and said, almost too easily, "The girls are planning a quick getaway, just a weekend thing. Something to clear our heads." I looked up from my toast. "That sounds good," I said. "Where to?" She smiled, already rehearsed. "Someplace warm. Maybe Tulum or the Keys. Just sun, wine, and a lot of sleeping in. No husbands allowed." She laughed when she said it, brushing it off like it wasn't a big deal. I smiled back. She deserved it. She worked hard, even if from home, and I knew how much her friend group meant to her. I didn't ask many questions. Why would I? She'd mentioned girls' trips before, ones that hadn't worked out for one reason or another. This time, it seemed like everything was falling into place. "Flights are already going up," she added. "I'd love to book mine this week. Do you think we could swing it?" Of course, we could. Things at work were going well. My new position came with a raise, and we'd been more than fine financially. I told her to go for it, to use the joint card and let me know if she needed anything else. She kissed me, sweetly and lightly, and said I was the best husband in the world. She left the room humming to herself. That was that. Or so I thought. In the days that followed, she became more animated. She shopped online late at night, trying on swimsuits in front of the mirror with a kind of energy I hadn't seen in a while. She talked about spa days, group chats, playlists they were building for the trip. I listened, amused, glad she had something to look forward to. I even helped her pack. Picked out a travel charger for her. Found her passport. Told her to have fun and not worry about me. She flew out on a Friday morning, kissed me at the curb like we were still in our honeymoon phase, and disappeared through the airport doors with a quick wave. I watched her until the crowd swallowed her up. The weekend was quiet. I spent it catching up on work, ordering takeout, cleaning up around the house. We texted here and there. She sent a couple of photos, palm trees, cocktails, sand. Always with the same caption. "Wish you were here, babe." I believed her. I didn't know then that she wasn't with her friends at all. She was with my boss. On a vacation I had paid for. Emily returned from her trip on a Tuesday evening. Her flight had apparently been delayed, and she came through the front door tired but glowing, skin a little tanned, hair curled from the humidity. She dropped her suitcase by the stairs and wrapped her arms around me, squeezing just a second longer than usual. "Miss me?" she asked, pulling back with that familiar smile. Of course I had. But there was something in her eyes, something I couldn't quite pin down. Not guilt. Not exactly. Just distance. Or maybe it was the way her body language shifted when I asked how the trip went. She launched into stories, beach bars, spa days, a ridiculous snorkeling excursion with too many jellyfish, but her tone was a little too polished, like she'd practiced the rhythm of it. I listened. I smiled. I asked questions. Nothing felt blatantly wrong. But something about the way she skimmed the surface of her stories kept pulling at me. She named a few friends I hadn't heard her mention in months. She dodged basic details, what hotel they stayed at, which airline they flew. When I asked about a picture she'd sent, joking about the angle, she hesitated before saying it was someone else who took it. "One of the girls," she said vaguely, already moving on. Later that night, I noticed she'd turned her phone face down on the nightstand. She never used to do that. We'd always been the kind of couple that left our devices open, unlocked, unbothered. It wasn't about surveillance. It was just a reflection of the trust we'd built. But now, the screen stayed dark, the lock screen hidden. I didn't say anything, but I noticed. I started noticing more too. The way she kept her phone closer during the day. The way she seemed to take calls in the other room, or pause a text when I walked in. Her laughter was still there, her routine still intact, but the emotional current beneath them had changed. It felt like someone had rearranged the furniture in our house while I wasn't looking. One afternoon, while she was in the shower, I caught myself standing in the hallway just listening. Not for anything specific. Just listening. That's when I realized how far I'd drifted from the man I was even a few weeks ago, the man who trusted her without question. I told myself it was nothing. That it was just post-vacation adjustment. That I was being paranoid because I'd missed her more than I realized. But I also couldn't shake the quiet feeling building in my chest. A feeling that something had shifted between us. Something I wasn't ready to name. A week after Emily got back, it became clear something in our rhythm had changed. Nothing huge. Nothing loud. But the kind of subtle drift you only notice when you're paying attention, which, by now, I was. She still made coffee in the mornings. Still kissed me goodbye when I left for work. But there was a certain stiffness in those gestures, like she was following a script she no longer felt. Her eyes didn't linger on mine the way they used to. Her laugh came a little too easily, like she was trying to prove nothing had changed. One night after dinner, I asked if she wanted to watch the show we'd been working through together. She hesitated, said she was tired, said she had emails to catch up on. I nodded and let it go, but I caught the way she sighed as she picked up her phone and disappeared upstairs. It wasn't exhaustion. It was avoidance. I started paying more attention, not because I was suspicious in any direct way, but because I couldn't shake the sense that I was living with a version of Emily who was no longer completely with me. Her texts became shorter. Her presence felt partial, like her body was in the room, but her mind had gone somewhere else and left me behind. She'd always been open about her days, who she talked to, what she was working on, what annoyed her. Now, she spoke in summaries. Nothing much. Just the usual. I'd come home with stories from work, updates, frustrations, even a joke or two, but she seemed disengaged, smiling in the way people do when they're not really listening. One evening, she got a call during dinner. She glanced at the screen, turned the phone face down, and excused herself with her plate half finished. She came back 10 minutes later like nothing had happened. I didn't ask who it was. I wanted to, but I didn't. I didn't want to hear the answer she might give. Or worse, the way she might lie and smile through it. There was also something odd about how she mentioned my boss now. Offhand remarks, little digs, like, he really leans on you too much, or, you deserve better than that place. It wasn't the comments themselves that got to me, it was how she said them. Like she'd formed opinions from somewhere other than what I'd told her. Still, I kept things to myself. I convinced myself I was being paranoid, that maybe we were just hitting a lull. Every couple goes through them, right? But I also started waking up with a pit in my stomach. A quiet dread I couldn't explain. Something wasn't right. I just didn't know what it was yet. There's a point where doubt becomes too loud to ignore, even if you're not ready to face it. For weeks, I tried to chalk it all up to stress, to changes in routine, to post-vacation reentry. But it was no longer just a feeling. It was the way her phone never left her side. The way she seemed to vanish into her own world when I was in the room. The way her responses turned hollow, like she was saving her real energy for someone else. I still hadn't said anything. Not because I was afraid of an argument. I think, deep down, I was afraid I might already know what I didn't want to admit. So I did what I told myself I would never do. I started paying attention, not just to what was in front of me, but to the things she wasn't saying. The silences. The patterns. The things that didn't quite add up. One night, when she said she was going out to meet a friend for dinner, I nodded and smiled and said, "Have fun." I waited an hour after she left, then walked into our bedroom and stared at her nightstand. Her phone was gone, of course, but I noticed her laptop was still open. She usually closed it when she left the house. Not this time. I hesitated. I stood there longer than I needed to, trying to convince myself I was being ridiculous. But then I sat down and opened the lid. Her email was still logged in. I didn't go digging, not really. I didn't type in names or search through every folder. I just glanced through the most recent messages. There wasn't anything direct. No smoking gun. But there were fragments. Hotel confirmations. A reservation under her name that didn't line up with the dates she gave me. An itinerary forwarded from a private email account that wasn't one I recognized. Her girls' trip hadn't been as group-based as she'd described. And the locations didn't match what she'd said. I closed the laptop and sat back in my chair. The room was quiet, but my thoughts were not. I didn't know exactly what I'd found, but I knew enough to feel the floor beginning to shift beneath me. I didn't confront her. Not that night. Not the next day, either. But I watched her more closely. I listened harder. She was careful, polished in her stories, but she was too smooth now. Too prepared. Like she knew there were things she had to keep consistent. The worst part wasn't the suspicion, it was the version of me I was becoming. Distrustful. Quietly watchful. The kind of man who checks timestamps and rereads conversations in his head. It's a lonely kind of existence, wondering if the person you share a bed with is living a whole other life just beyond your reach. I wasn't ready to accuse her. I wasn't even sure I could. But I had to know. I had to see it with my own eyes. She came home with sunglasses still on, suitcase in hand, and that same glowing tint she'd returned with a few weeks before. The boss, my boss, Darren, was with her. I froze when I saw them together outside our building. I hadn't expected him there. She'd told me he was out of town. In fact, she hadn't mentioned him at all recently. But there they were, side by side, walking from a rideshare with the lazy ease of people who just shared a weekend together. They didn't see me at first. I was parked just across the street, coming back from a hardware run. I had paused to take a call in the car. When I looked up, it felt like someone had pulled the air out of my lungs. They laughed at something. Her hand brushed his arm. He leaned in like he was used to being close to her. And then she kissed him, just on the cheek, but long enough to make it clear that this wasn't a goodbye between acquaintances. It was soft, familiar, lingering. I didn't get out of the car. I couldn't. I sat there, every muscle tense, trying to process what I was seeing. I didn't need an explanation. I didn't need a confession. That moment gave me more truth than any message or email ever could. Darren walked off casually, no urgency, no guilt. She wheeled her suitcase into our building like nothing had happened. I drove around for an hour. When I finally walked in, she was in the kitchen making tea, like she hadn't just shattered the life we built. She smiled at me over her shoulder. "Hey," she said. "Miss me?" I didn't answer. I didn't ask anything, either. I couldn't trust whatever explanation she might have rehearsed. But something in my silence must have unnerved her. She kept talking, rambling, nervous. She said she was tired. Said she'd explain everything after a shower. I nodded like I believed her. But inside, something had broken cleanly, decisively. There were no more doubts. No more what-ifs. She had gone on vacation with my boss. The man I'd worked under for nearly a decade. The same man who sat across from me in quarterly reviews and holiday parties. The same man who gave a toast at our wedding. She lied. She planned it. She used my trust to fund her betrayal. And now? Now it was time for me to respond. She didn't even try to deny it when I finally said his name. I waited until the next morning. Let the silence stretch long through the night. When I spoke, it was quiet. Measured. I asked her, "How long has it been going on with Darren?" Her mouth opened like she was about to lie, but something in my face must have told her not to waste the breath. She looked away, jaw clenched, and said, "It just happened." I nodded. That was the last time I spoke to her. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I didn't ask for reasons. I didn't care. The trust was already gone. There was nothing she could say to restore what she'd burned. That afternoon, I began to clear the house. Everything she owned, every dress, every framed photo, every trinket she loved, went into boxes. I stacked them neatly by the front door, then one by one, carried them outside. I didn't throw them or damage them. I wanted her to see every piece of her life removed with the same quiet care she had destroyed mine. Methodical. Permanent. The car she gifted me last year? She'd put it in my name. I drove it straight to a new garage and changed the locks, updated the registration, and wiped every trace of her from its systems. It was mine now, and I made sure she would never sit behind the wheel again. Then came work. I gave my notice within the week. But before I walked out of that building for good, I spent my final hours doing something I never thought I'd do. I went into the company files. I knew what to look for. I'd seen the inconsistencies before. Darren wasn't just dishonest in his personal life. He was reckless with the company too, fudged numbers, misreported expenses, invoices that didn't line up. I gathered the documents. Printed, copied, backed up. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about doing what was right. I didn't leave them on his desk. I took them to the tax office. What happened next wasn't immediate, but it was inevitable. Within 2 months, Darren's business was frozen. Accounts were locked. Audits launched. I don't know the final damage, but I know the company folded before the year ended. And with it, whatever little life Emily thought she had started building. She tried to reach me, of course. At first, through texts. Then calls. Then friends. Messages ranged from apologetic to angry to desperate. I ignored them all. When she showed up at my parents' house weeks later, I didn't answer the door. My mother told her gently, "He's done." And I was. Not out of hatred, but because I knew I deserved better than a life built on lies and entitlement. She made her choices. So I made mine. It's strange, starting over when you never expected to. There's no map for rebuilding a life that once felt certain. Just a string of small, quiet decisions. Waking up without bitterness. Making coffee for one. Going for walks in the morning with nowhere in particular to be. At first, it feels like a life in pieces. But eventually, the pieces stop hurting. They start to fit into something new. I moved out of the city a few months after everything. Found a small rental cottage on the edge of a lake, nothing fancy, just quiet and clean, with more space than I needed. I didn't tell many people where I went. I wanted solitude, not sympathy. I wanted to hear my own thoughts again, without the echo of betrayal. Work came slowly. I picked up some freelance consulting, then part-time remote roles. Nothing high pressure. I needed time to feel normal again, to not scan every email and conversation for hidden meanings. Time to stop looking over my shoulder. I met Kara at a local bookstore. She worked there part-time, just filling in between her teaching contracts. She noticed the book I was holding, an old novel, one I'd read before, and asked if it was worth starting. I said yes, and for the first time in months, I meant it. Our first conversation was easy. We didn't talk about the past. Just books, movies, small things that made us smile. I hadn't felt like smiling in a long time. It didn't become anything right away. We started as two people who enjoyed each other's company. Coffee here, walks there. She had a calmness to her, quietly curious, not trying to fix me or pull more than I was ready to give. She let the silence exist without rushing to fill it. That's how I knew I could trust her. Eventually, I told her. Not everything at once, but enough. About Emily. About Darren. About what I'd lost. She didn't flinch. She didn't pity me. She just said, "That must have hurt," and let me sit with that truth. It was the first time in a long while that I felt heard without feeling examined. Kara isn't Emily. She doesn't try to be. And I don't look for replacements. I'm not trying to rebuild the same life. I'm trying to build something better, piece by piece. Honest. Simple. Real. There are still moments when the past catches up. A smell. A photo I forgot to delete. A song that used to play in our old kitchen. But those moments don't wreck me anymore. They pass through me like weather. Temporary. Survivable. I'm not bitter. I'm just free. I don't think you ever really get over a betrayal like that. Not completely. It becomes something you live beside, not something you walk away from. It shows up in the quietest places, an old calendar notification, a saved contact you forgot to delete, the way you instinctively lock down your phone even though no one's ever asked to see it. But time softens the edges. And eventually, the betrayal becomes less about what they did and more about how you survived it. I don't hate Emily anymore. I don't love her either. She's just a part of my story now. A chapter one didn't expect to write. One that ended far differently than I imagined it would. I hope she found whatever she was chasing. I hope she understands, in some corner of her conscience, what she threw away. I haven't heard from her in a long time. I'm not sure if she gave up trying or just finally understood that I meant it when I closed the door. Either way, the silence has been a gift. As for Darren, his business never recovered. Last I heard, he was facing serious financial penalties. Most of his clients walked away. I don't know if he ever connected the dots back to me, or if he just thought karma showed up early. Either way, I don't care. Kara and I are still figuring things out. We don't use words like forever or soulmate. We talk about today, about how to be good to each other now. She's seen the broken parts of me and didn't flinch. That kind of presence, that kind of steadiness, means more than grand declarations ever could. I've learned that love isn't about perfection or performance. It's about choosing someone. Every day. Quietly, consistently, with honesty and grace. And choosing yourself when someone else refuses to. Looking back, I'm proud of the man I became after everything fell apart. I didn't let it define me. I didn't become cruel. I became clear. And that clarity is something I carry forward, not just in relationships, but in how I live, how I forgive, and how I protect my peace. This isn't the life I planned, but it's a life I'm proud of. And sometimes, that's more than enough.